We're ready to go? All right. We're going to begin. Sorry for the delay. We had some technological challenges with Channel 4. Of course, we want to make sure that our broadcast, our reach is as wide as we can, especially during this time. We call to order the April 18th, 2020 meeting of the Gary Common Council. As is our custom, we will begin with prayer by Miss Tammy Davis. I call her Deaconess. She's a member of Christ Baptist Church in Gary's first district, as well as a longtime compliance officer in the city of Gary. So we'll have our prayer by Miss Tammy Davis.
Thank you so much, Councilman Goodwin. May we all bow our heads. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this opportunity to once again fellowship together to worship you in our leadership roles. You have anointed and appointed each of us to do your will. And we ask, oh God, that we follow your word and that all the decisions, the thoughts, the comments will be done in decent and in order. Heavenly Father, you know that we are all working together for your good and that our work is your work. And that as we live and breathe, it is our will to give you all the glory, all the praise, and all the honor for the things that you have done, the things that you are doing, and the things that you are going to do. For we know that there is nothing too hard for you. Heavenly Father, we know that you have blessed us with the opportunity to still lead your people by utilizing technology to ensure that the business of this city is still being taken care of. So Father God, I ask right now that your presence be felt all through the electronic waves of this meeting. For every home that is represented, may you bless it and cover it with the blood of Jesus and the blood of Jesus alone. And that every home will be honored, Lord Jesus, in a way that we are representing the future and the present of these your people. I ask, oh God, that you continue to bless the leaders, bless our council people, bless the administrators, staff, the mayor of this great city, that we are called to do your will and that we will find ourselves worthy to be called the sons and daughters of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I ask of this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Davis, for offering our prayer this evening. Now we will have our Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Here.
Councilman Brewer.
Here.
Councilwoman Brown.
Present.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Here.
Councilman Godwin.
Present.
Councilman Lay.
Present.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Here.
Councilman Williams. Councilman Williams.
Here.
President Brown. Mr. President, there are 8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 8 members present and 1 absent, we have a quorum to conduct the business of the Gary Common Council. At this point, we will have we'll have our minutes. All council members should have before you the minutes of the August 4th, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion to approve said minutes?
So moved, Mr. President.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by council members Brown and Weatherspoon. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, the minutes of our August 4th, 2020 meeting are approved. Assignment of council pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
CPO 2020-40, an amendment to ordinance 5881, section 2-1074K, regarding the hiring of Academy certified police officers in the city of Gary, Indiana, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Chief Brian Evans, Gary Police Department.
Public safety.
CPR 2020-12, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, as it relates to an excess valuation deduction tax abatement for real property vacant building deduction of Alliance Steel Corporation, as approved by Resolution 3050 pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1 for the purpose of modifying and amending the project development agreement, modifying and amending the original Form SB1 BBD dated November 2nd, 2020, and granting a waiver of noncompliance as it applies to an untimely and late filing of the January 1st, 2019 Form CF1 BBD and the Form 322 BBD to the Office of the Lake County, Indiana Auditor, and the submission of said forms to the designated body to report compliance with the original Form SB1 BBD, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, and the Indiana Office of Community Investment.
Planning and development.
Mr. President, is ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilman
President.
Williams.
Mr.
Councilman
President,
Williams. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, the Public Safety Committee has before it CPO 2020-40. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council.
Councilmember Brewer,
Yes.
and yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Williams.
With the majority of the committee has approved CPO 2020-40, I report out to the council.
Thank you.
Mr.
Councilman
President,
Brewer,
the Planning and Development Committee has before CPR 2020-12. I approve this to be reported out to the council. Councilwoman Atkins
Yes.
and Councilman, Witherspoon.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, the majority of the Planning and Development Committee have approved CPR 2020-12.
thank you, Councilman Brewer. Councilman Williams,
President. We are,
Just- yep.
go ahead, Mr. President.
Just report out CPO 2020-40.
Okay, I thought I had done that. Okay, Mr. President, the majority of the committee has approved CPL 2020-40 for reporting out to the council.
Thank you. Councilman Brewer,
Mr. President, I report out CPR 2020-12, Planning and Development.
thank you. This time we will have our special and select. I wanted to take a privilege and Miss Peggy Blackwell of the Visit Miller Beach organization, as well as with the Shops on Lake Street, is going to give a very brief overview of the efforts to improve wayfinding and signage and furthering the growth, the small business growth on Lake Street, where we know a significant investment has been made to improve the roadway, the streetscaping, and the accessibility of the shops on Lake Street. So I've given Ms. Blackwell 3 minutes to kind of give us an overview of their efforts and some of the needs that they foresee, that we foresee. I happen to represent the first district where the shops on Lake Street are. So Ms. Blackwell, unmute yourself and we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping Christopher, hopefully Christopher is also out there unmuting, because we were going to kind of do this in tandem, but here, let's get going. Christopher, are you there?
Hello?
He is here. He's here.
All right. Hello. Thank you for having us. My name is Peggy Blackwell. I'm the president of Visit Miller Beach, and I also run an Airbnb business here.
And I'm Christopher Dorosek. I'm president of Shops on Lake and also an owner of Indie Indie Bang Bang.
Well, when I first brought our property here 20 years ago, everybody was saying how much potential there was in Miller because of the scenic beauty.
And I've been here for about 8 years with our business. But even today, the downtown is still struggling. We're here to talk about the wayfinding signage that is desperately needed.
So even though the new streetscape looks great, we already lost some businesses and we're still in a pandemic. So we're concerned about things getting worse. But in my role with Visit Miller Beach, we meet regularly with the business owners, the community leaders, South Shore CBA, where we joined as a partner to promote tourism here because tourism brings in a lot of spending and investment. It's the 6th largest industry in Indiana and growing at a healthy pace. A lot of people may not realize that the Indiana Dunes are the state of Indiana's top tourist destination. I think in 2019 attracted almost 4 million people. And our research shows that Gary only gets 2% of all the Indiana Dunes visitors. Only 2%, even though we've got great beaches, trails, even a visitor center. And we're having problems getting people into, beyond into our destinations. They're reacting. We get feedback from the Airbnbs. They do react to negative stereotypes and people don't know how to find our destinations. Christopher?
Yes, so we've been meeting with the redevelopment groups and having meetings over the past year on this project. We met with incoming, at the time, Mayor Prince and his advisor, Darnell Lyles, to get the buy-in on the project. After meeting with Prince at his office, we continue to work on this initiative to move forward, working with the redevelopment and economic development. After that, we also met with them again after our final plan back in this past June to basically kind of get a general timeline on what we're looking at, which I believe that we're talking about next spring.
So basically what we did is we created an actionable plan for interstate and local highway signs, community wayfinding locations within Miller, neighborhood identification for Etna and Glen Ryan. We even did some mock-ups that could be used for the signs going off of the Marquette Park signs. And we also did cost estimates using INDOT information, just trying to pull it together as much as possible to give the city administration kind of a head start on the project.
Exactly. And we're here basically to ask for you guys for support because our businesses need it. Not only the Shops on Lake, not only the restaurants and the shops and the bars, but all the businesses basically in the city of Gary need these signage. So people know that we're here, that we exist, and we can get a lot more people from outside the neighborhood coming in and spending their dollars in the city.
Just one more small fact, just to help you understand why this is so important, is that even though we are the closest National Park Service destinations to Chicago and Indianapolis, we still only get 2% of the visitors. And the other communities do have wayfinding, even off the highway, to direct their tourists to their destinations. And 80% of the tourists to this area come from Illinois and other parts of Indiana. So that's why that's really important. So again, I'm Peggy Blackwell from the Visit Miller Beach Project.
And I'm Christopher Dorosek, one of the businesses on Lake Street.
I want to say thank you both to Peggy and Chris, both of whom have worked tremendously hard over the past year and a half, really, to improve wayfinding, and to try to boost the tourism, which we know is so critical to the sustainability of local businesses and the vibrancy of what we're doing on Lake Street and Shelby Street and in Edna and Glen Ryan as we prepare for the double track that is going to come. We want to make sure that we have sustainable businesses that we can build from as we do transit-oriented development and other real estate developments in that critical area for our city in terms of infrastructure. So thanks both to you, Peggy, as well as Chris, for all of your work and your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Any other members for special and select?
Mr.
Mr.
President,
President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized, and then Councilman Williams.
thank you, Mr. President. Let's say thank you to Peggy and Chris for coming on and sharing that information. Definitely the improvements on Lake Street is great improvements that have happened. And I visit Lake Street quite a bit, and the businesses are suffering at this time. And we continue to ask the citizens of this community to continue to support the businesses on Lake Street. But also, definitely what Councilman Godwin was saying, definitely coming off 80, 94, and 90 off the toll road, there needs to be a special signage there. Big letters coming across the road and everything, letting people know exactly what we have. And that needs to be declared. It is declared a destination place, and we need to take advantage of it as residents of this great community. So I do support you all in those efforts there, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure that happens. And also, this is for Mr. President Godwin and for the mayor. I got a call yesterday, and I went out to, I think this is Sylvian Street, Sylvian and Maple, out in the first district there. And I got a chance to speak to a resident which had got a petition signed, which I will circulate this to you, Councilman Godwin, the mayor, and also to the at-large members. Where the street is just corroding. It's just basically, the kids can't play on the street. Water is now detouring from going down the street to the drainage, now going towards property. And this street needs to be repaired. Got a chance to walk, and I got a chance to visit other neighbors' properties where the water has done damage to the property, where people have fixed their property, but the problem still exists. And for people to continue to do more investment to their property, we need to do our part to make sure that we take care of this. I wouldn't say that this street should prioritize any other street, but I would say it should. If you see the street is literally just crumbling. It's not even walkable. There's a mailbox on the street where residents have to stop and get mail. And there's a resident that lives right there where when people stop, they slide past the mailbox because there's so many, the street is just crumbling just that bad. I saw inside the petition, one of the ones that stuck out to me was the little kid that fell and scarred himself all the way up by playing, just basically playing because the street is falling apart. And the 85-year-old that signed a petition and just said that she just afraid to walk in her neighborhood. Something of this nature here, I think we need to take care of it, especially with water that's coming towards property. And these people are making a great effort and keeping up their property, making improvements, but they want to make greater improvements. But because of the water issue, they cannot do those things. So I would like to just make sure that you get these, President Godwin, and also I'll make sure the mayor get a copy also too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Williams.
thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make two announcements. One is our first 6th district community forum was last week and it went really well. I want to make an announcement about the second one, which will be coming up on September 17th at 6 o'clock. We'll announce the special guests at our next meeting because they haven't reported back that they can do it or not. Also, this Saturday, this is Penny Parade for the 6th district. It will be at noon, and we'll start off the parade at Haley's Sim School schoolyard. Route will be from down Georgia to the east side of the neighborhood, back down to Broadway, and then of course crossing over to the west side of the 6th district.
Thank you, Councilman Williams.
Mr. President,
Councilman Weatherspoon.
yeah, just want to take the time and recognize a couple of citizens here, Ms. Lachey Willis and Ms. Jacqueline Crawford. For those of you all who have that visit Facebook, there was a reported dump site in the 2nd District. This was over at Ambridge Park on 2nd Avenue near the between Grant Street and Taft Street. And I mean, it just was deplorable, the dumping that went on there. It's like someone had torn down a house and left it there, as well as the fact that the weeds had grown up around the fence that was around the basketball court, just wildlife trees, you name it, it was there. Ms. Lachey Willis and Ms. Jacqueline Crawford organized her neighborhood, which there is in the Ambridge community. And they went out and they spent a day cleaning up this area. They were very successful, along with the help of General Services who came by afterwards and got up to the. So again, I just want to thank Ms. Lachey Willis and Ms. Jacqueline Crawford, because they absolutely represent an example of what we need more of in this community. Also today, and although I've been the gentleman will remain nameless because he asked me not to mention his name, there was a gentleman also who was well known in this community that was also cleaning up the tennis court at the Brunswick Park. He says he and a friend of his, they use that tennis court often. It's one of the better ones in the city. But just seeing the neighbors, just seeing the residents out cleaning up, I just simply have to take my hat off to them. And again, we need more of that in the community. Also, I don't know if you all saw what was in the paper today, but the Indiana Historic Preservation Committee has basically put Gary Roosevelt High School on the 10 most endangered landmark list for the state of Indiana, which is a good thing. I also found that our own Gary Preservation Committee is also working toward getting landmark status, not only for Gary Roosevelt, but also for City Hall as well. So want to congratulate them on that, and just a recognition of a couple of historic monuments or buildings that are right here within our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Weatherspoon. Other
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell.
Good afternoon, good evening. Please join the 5th District in our dumpster days. We have a dumpster day set up for August the 28th through the 31st. 10 dumpsters will be throughout the 5th District. Those locations are Ridge Road and Pierce, 3477 Calhoun Street, 2120 Madison Street, Ridge Road and Taft, 25th and Maryland Street, and Ridge Road in Virginia. This will be the 28th through the 31st. So please bring all your junk. Please place it in the dumpsters, not around the dumpsters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Atkins.
just have a couple of things. If I can find my notes. Okay. So first, I wanted to extend a thanks on August the 8th, which was 2 Saturdays ago, I believe. The 4th District hosted their first summer bazaar. That event was well attended. And I want to thank all of those vendors who supported this initiative. We had about 25 vendors turn out. And between the hours of 12 and 4, we had high traffic. And I want to be clear to the public who was not able to attend, who might have read about the event. So the event was more than just something to do. In the 4th District, I try to lead with intent and we execute with purpose. So the reason for the event was to provide a marketplace during the pandemic, to support our small businesses, also to support a majority of Black-owned businesses within our community and recycle our dollar with each other. We also had the census team on site to help increase our response rate as a city to our census. And then also we did have participation from organic fruits and vegetable vendors in an effort to address the food desert here within the city. So I want to thank all of those participants who joined us. I definitely want to thank my colleagues, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell for being a vendor and also supporting, and definitely Councilwoman of 3rd District, Mary Brown, for attending and supporting as well. I do want to give a couple of other 4th District announcements. Upcoming on Wednesday, September the 2nd, we will be hosting a table talk with Ty Session. As you guys know, we introduced that initiative in January of this year. And the goal of that is for us to have fluid conversations about the progress we're making in the 4th, ideas that we want to discuss, and particular issues that we want to address as we prepare for our 4th District community meeting, which will take place Thursday, October the 1st. So again, the table talk session will be on September the 2nd. The 4th District community meeting will be on Thursday, October the 1st. The details in terms of the locations or venues of those meetings will be communicated to you guys via my mailing list. Also, you can call my administrative assistant, Ms. Karen Lane, at 881-1315, and they will make sure that we post that information on the Gary Common Council site. Lastly, but not least, myself, 4th District Council Representative, and my colleague, 1st District and Acting President of the Council, William Godwin, will be hosting this upcoming Thursday, the Emerson Blitz. As we talked on the last meeting, this is an opportunity to engage and promote an inclusive environment for our residents in the Emerson area. We have a number of community partners who will be there on site. The flow of this meeting is more of a trade show flow. We have these vendors and our community participants there so that residents can get information about these particular entities and then also learn about the upcoming developments that's happening in the Emerson area. Some of those community partners in attendance will be Dr. Seabrook and the Community Health Net Centers. The Gary Railcats have confirmed participation. Gary Life Community Center, Faith, CDC, Progressive, the United States Census Bureau will be on site. Our Calumet Township trustee, Ms. Kimberly K. Robinson, will be on site to give information about her services. Our House Gary, this is where the event will be taking place, but they also will be there to hand out information about their events going forward. And lastly, but not least, we will be having MVH partners on site to engage with the residents and let us know about the 3 phases of development that is coming to the Emerson area. Again, that event is this upcoming Thursday, which is August the 20th at Gary Art House, 411 East 5th Avenue from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins, and I certainly look forward to joining you Thursday from 4 to 6 at Art House for the Emerson Blitz. So
Absolutely.
we're definitely looking forward to that. Other members for special and select?
Mr. President, I have a couple things.
All right, Councilman Lay.
Let me do the first one. It's real easy. I'd like to have information on this Economic Development Corporation. What brought it to my attention, you consistently was talking about 15% going into that. So I'd like to see your 2020 budget. Certainly what was in that corporation. I understand it has a bank account. I understand Mr. Brewer is the president. So I'd like to get some information. I know absolutely nothing about it. And certainly you're asking for 15%. The other issue is I have consistently said that this CBA committee, in fact, is not a 501c4. So let me go back and start with I said it prior to July the 28th. On July the 28th, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty much reduced to memory. On July the 28th, we received a communication from you, Mr. President, that came from Mr. Dillon. In that communication, he said he spoke to the Internal Revenue Service and that they had awarded the 501c4 on February the 4th, 2020. Well, there's an inconsistency there because the letter that was sent to us and the dates and everything around this letter said they awarded it January 2020. That letter came out to the council on or about August the 3rd, indicating they received the information on August the 1st that had a August the 4th date on it. So, and certainly since that time, they have consistently said that I was certainly disseminating bad information. I sent the council, I received a letter latest in time, and I'm sure you guys understand that is the way the law works. I received a letter from the Internal Revenue Service dated August the 10th, 2020, which indicated that this committee did not have a 501c4. I made it available to the council, I believe, on August the 13th. So I'm just not making up information as had been so indicated. But let me tell you how it can be cleared up. Because at this point, I think you have to accept the latest letter. One of the ways they can clear it up, I've asked for it consistently, and maybe the council members have not understood. It's called the 1024A. If they produce that document is how you acquire the 501c4. So apparently I've consistently asked for that. They have not presented the document. Now I understand you're attempting to adopt my idea of creating a special commission. And when I say adopt, you're adopting it. You didn't come up with it, you're adopting it. The problem with that, you're taking quality and changing it to quantity. In other words, I suggested 11, you went to 17. I have a formula that I use to vote. The needs of the many outweigh the few and certainly the one. In this case, it may be the needs of the many outweigh the few and certainly the three. So again, what I've done with my amendment, and you also seem to be bringing up something else. I don't see how anyone can apply to sit on any commission or any committee that does not submit a resume and present themselves for an interview. As an example, I believe you said someone that was applying for a janitor's position was required to submit a resume. I certainly will not agree that because they live in the first district, or you may believe that you can get votes from them, that they can be put on this commission that I'm suggesting, and certainly not 17, without doing anything but sending in a letter of interest. And the reason I'm going through this is called truth and veracity. If they have not been truthful on the 501c4, then I'm not sure how we can use these people to do anything. And as far as two people, this African Americans have been trained in this city that I'm aware of since 1968. I was part of it. That's 52 years ago. The problem is not the lack of training of African Americans. The problem is the lack of admission into the unions. Now, I think Dr. Needham and Ms. McCready would serve this community much better if they talk to the white unions. I can't go there and convince them to certify any program they set up as a program where they will allow these apprentice program, where we allow these people to join the union. That's where I think the greatest need of these two individuals to help the city would be where it should be placed, talking to the unions, not necessarily to this council or to African Americans on training. We've done that. We're the most trained people probably in America today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other members for special and select? I want to add one announcement. The first district will have a Zoom community meeting on September the 3rd, Thursday, September the 3rd at 6:30 p.m. We will focus on recycling, environmental affairs, as well as Marquette Park and our other parks, Etna and Glen Ryan, in the first district. So we're hoping to have Mr. Eric Reeves, as well as Mr. Dan Vicari and Ms. Brenda Scott Henry to join us to talk about recycling, environmental affairs, and our parks in the first district, Thursday, September the 3rd at 6:30 p.m. And the Zoom information will be disseminated to the public. I don't think I have another announcement. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown?
I just have a question. Councilman Lay has asked that whomever is going to be a part of the CBA agreement, that they submit some information about themselves, a resume, or come in and be interviewed. And I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think that if we as council people are going to receive funding from these companies, then we certainly ought to know something about these persons. So I don't see anything wrong with that. I think, in fact, I think it ought to happen. I think we ought to get some information about these persons and have some interviews. So I just want to say I support that, Attorney Lay. I think that they should be interviewed. And I think that they should, at a very minimum, submit a resume. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Any other members for special and select? All right. Seeing and hearing none, we will now go to our council pending ordinances and resolutions on third and final reading.
TPO 2020-39, an amendment to the Community Benefits Agreement Ordinance, sponsored by Cloris Lay, Councilman at Large, Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Councilman Brewer. You're muted.
Thank you. Mr. President, I would defer this back to committee. And I would ask if Corporation Council will also give us an outline of all the changes that's been proposed. I know it's been requested, but I haven't received it. And I talked to you earlier and you indicated you hadn't received it also. But I definitely want to ask if this will go back to committee because there are some things that still need to get hammered out before we do pass it.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Any questions or discussion?
I'm a little bit unclear. You said Corporation Council is going to, what are you asking Corporation Council for?
I'm asking for a breakdown of all the changes that's been made to this, the amendment changes. There was quite a few that was laid out. You had yours in section 2, but there was quite a few from the administration that had been laid out also.
So you're asking for him to do section 2 for you?
Do it all the changes.
A summary.
A summary. Thank you.
No, not thank you. What do you mean?
No, that was for government.
Yeah. So a summary. So now we're going back, as opposed to us reading it, we're now going to ask the Corporation Council to become the teacher. And in other words, you have the original 9305, you have the amendments. Why wouldn't the council, reading is fundamental. Why wouldn't they read it themselves? I don't understand this procedure.
There's a lot of changes, Mr. Lay, and that request was put in at the last meeting. So I'm trying to
actually
request.
It was put in July.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to honor all changes that's being brought up at this time, and that's the request that was brought up. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Okay, so you're confused about my changes? Is that what you're saying?
About your changes? No, I'm not.
Yeah, I can give them to you. They're in the amendment. I don't think. I haven't talked to Corporation Council about my amendment.
I want one summary page for everybody. This is not just for me. This is for everyone to follow along where we at with this.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor here.
Mayor Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here this evening. So there's been a lot of discussion about CBA essentially since the beginning of the year. This administration got engaged in those conversations almost immediately, and to that extent expressed immediate concern not only about the CBA, but as well as the MOU that was associated with the casino project, as well as the CBA in general. The Councilman Lay certainly brings up some interesting points, which I don't need to reiterate. He shared them all with you. And, at that particular point, in the spirit of cooperation and wanting to come up to, or at least with some amicable solution between the council and the administration, I agree to be a co-sponsor on the amendments. But to be clear, this administration still has concerns about the CBA, and not only has concerns about it, quite frankly, we think that at the very minimum, it's something that should be studied amongst the administration as well as the council. And if at all, better documents certainly can be crafted and so should be submitted. To that extent, we also made some concerted efforts to address some of the deficiencies that we saw that existed, particularly the opportunities for traditionally underserved representatives of the community to have an opportunity to participate in government, and those being MBEs, obviously women, business enterprises, as well as veterans. And we made exceptional efforts to amend our procurement processes and policies, in addition to including additional responsibilities for Tammy Davis, who is actually on the line this evening and may want to speak to some of the benefits and some of the impact that we've certainly been able to achieve towards that end. The point is, Mr. Chairman and members of council, I believe that there are clear impediments to the CBA that certainly would thwart business rather than encouraging them. And certainly we all want to provide opportunities for our residents. I think the councilman's perspective in terms of what one of the impediments to that is spot on, and it's not necessarily always training, but in addition to that, certainly the opportunity to join in the union when you're talking about a specific industry. But if the council will indulge us just a little bit more, I'm fairly certain, based on the conversations that I've had with Ms. Davis, that she would love to share some of the recent impact that she's had relative to compliance and ensuring that the procurement processes that we've engaged in, as well as other efforts to include those neglected groups, are addressed. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that if she is prepared to this evening. I don't want to put her on the spot.
I'm prepared, Mayor and President Godwin, should that be your wishes.
Yeah, I would just say that this is really a conversation for a committee. I mean, we've had a couple committee meetings. We have not heard these perspectives. And I think to do this now seems to be a little inappropriate. I agree, we need to take a deep dive on this. We need to have all the parties at the table, your administration, folks from the CBA, folks in the business community, so that and of course, council members, so that we're all on the same page. And so I'm hopeful that this conversation will extend to the committee meeting that the chair of the planning committee has proposed. But please go forward.
Point of order, Mr. President. You just allowed someone to discuss signage and all of those things during the meeting. I think this is absolutely more important to this entire community than just the signage sitting out there on 12 and 20 or wherever it was suggested. You're talking about 15% going into this Economic Development Corporation. So we certainly can't give 15% to that, 15% to CBA. I'm not even sure why we give 15% to the Economic Development Corporation. So,
well, I mean, that's fine. That's your opinion. But I think that's something that we should hear in the committee meeting.
We should vote on it too. I believe if the council is doing it, it should be a vote by the council.
Well, absolutely. That's why we're having a vote. We have a motion on the table.
No, I understand. I'm not talking about that. I was talking about once the mayor offered it, we have dealt with other things. You asked for questions before we voted. I understand we're voting whether to return it to committee. I'm not
about the substance of it. But this has turned into a conversation about the substance, which I'm fine.
Mr. Chair.
Mayor Prince.
So, Mr. Chair, I actually agree with you. I think that this certainly could be handled in a different venue. We were simply only attempting to answer the question that the council posed. We thought it was an excellent opportunity. Again, we've addressed these concerns from probably the second or third week in the administration, as well as, have been willing to continue to engage in those conversations. But I agree with you, probably would be a lot more substantive if, it's done. But again, we're prepared to answer or address it tonight or whenever the chair seems.
I withdraw my request. Mr. President, I withdraw.
Thank you, Mayor Prince, and I acknowledge Councilman Lay. So any other questions or discussion about the motion on the table?
Mr. Chair, this is City Attorney Rodney Cole. Just really quickly, I do have one thing that I wanted to discuss. You guys had asked for a summary of the changes. Now, is that different from the amended version where there are bold sections for the new sections and crossed out sections for the sections that were being removed?
Can someone repeat that? Because I could barely hear.
So he was saying basically there's a edited version, I suppose, track change version. The request that was made back in July, given that there were so many more changes beyond what Councilman Lay spoke to vis-a-vis Section 2, there was a lot of substantive changes that were not just mere word changes, but had substantial substantive implications that we thought it was important for all parties involved, the council certainly, and also the CBA committee group that was part of this legislation that was passed by at least 4 of the members who are on this current council. So we thought it would be helpful to have that summary. This is what we're doing. Here are the implications of that. Because what we noticed is that it's not merely word changes, but some of these changes have a significant degree about whether this CBA would even apply, even to Broadway lofts, right? So we're aware that wording has implications. It's not like we're changing and or the or that, right? These are substantive moves. So it's important that everybody's clear exactly what's being done and what the implications of those changes are. That was the request in July. That was the request at the last committee meeting. And that is again the request at tonight's council meeting.
And I apologize. I think I was under the impression that the track changes version where we're showing what was removed and what was being added had sufficed. So if that's not the case, I will I'll put together a short summary of the descriptions of the changes.
Thank you. Any other questions and discussion about the motion on the table? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-39 is deferred back to the Planning and Development Committee.
CPO 2020-41, an ordinance amending chapter 123 entitled Zoning Code of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Gary, Indiana. Petitioner Spectacle Entertainment LLC, 111 Monument Circle, Suite 777, Indianapolis, Indiana. Property at 29th and Jerry Street, Gary, Indiana.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-41.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. We'll have our overview at this time.
Mr. President, this is Rodney.
You're a little choppy. I don't know whether others are having a challenge hearing, but you may want to speak into the mic a little bit.
It's a little bit better. I've got to get a little bit closer.
Okay.
Is that better?
That's better.
I believe there's 2020-41 and 2020-42 that are before the council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If we could do both at the same time, they are actually both ordinance or they're amendments to the ordinance, zoning ordinance that would thereby vacate the portion of Calhoun Street that in an alleyway that are within the footprint of the casino and adjacent there too. If we could, in order for to save everybody's time here on the council, to handle them both at the same time. Essentially, I believe we have Ms. Karen Price, I believe Mr. Walker, and then also Mr. Ziegler as well on the line. They would like to cover a portion or cover part of the brief overview as to what this ordinance actually does, aside of the general description that it actually vacates those public ways between the streets.
Are you calling on Ms. Price to speak? Is it Attorney Price?
Yes.
All right.
So the ordinances will allow for the Hard Rock to have the right of way for their parking lot. So we've done the proper service. And so I didn't know if there were any questions regarding that.
Is there any objections by any residents in that area?
I don't think she heard you. Attorney Price?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Ms. Price, was there any objections by any of the residents in that area? I know you have to send out letters to everyone, and we're all aware of what's happened there, but just want to know.
No, we haven't received anything.
Okay.
And
Public hearing is tonight, however, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Right, there's a note.
What was that again?
The public hearing is tonight. So there was a notice for anyone that was objecting could come and speak tonight.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, are we putting the cart before the horse? If we haven't had a public hearing yet, why would we vote on it?
That's correct. If I may, Mr. Chair, this is Rodney, the city attorney.
You're not very clear to hear. Do you want to come back into the chamber? I know you're in City Hall, and maybe you can sit here and just speak, because we can't, it's an echo effect.
Yeah, I'll take that since we can't hear Rodney. The statute permits having the public hearing tonight. So the public hearing notices were sent out for anyone that wants to object to show up tonight while it's on third and final.
So I guess my question is, we're voting on it not knowing whether the community objects to it.
No, they've had notice. It's been pending. They had notice before the Planning Commission. Initially, we did have public come out. Their concerns were addressed, and then it passed on through the process to the Planning Committee, and now it's here on ordinance. So they've had at least 3 opportunities to speak out on it, and the statute, if you look at it, actually permits the hearing to be part of the council deliberation tonight.
Okay.
And Mr. President, I know just a piggyback off the attorney, it was advertised, and we advertised this via Zoom is advertised also. So anyone that had a problem, they could log on where you have to open up the public for anyone to speak.
So we need to open up now after the overview if people want to comment. Okay. And I presume proper notice was made to people that we'd be meeting and they had access to it, but in any event, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, notice was mailed and posted out at the property location.
Perfect, thank you. So at this time, are there any members of the public who would like to speak about these ordinances? Okay, seeing and hearing no one. Is there any other overview or insight that the administration would like to provide? Any questions council members have, questions or discussions?
Mr. Chair,
Attorney Williams?
if you're going to take both matters at one time, the clerk must read the second ordinance.
Absolutely.
And that's, of course, if there's no objection from a council member.
Seeing and hearing no objection, Madam Clerk?
CPO 2020-42, an ordinance amending Chapter 123 entitled Zoning Code of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Gary, Indiana, Petition Spectacle Entertainment LLC, 111 Monument Circle, Suite 777, Indianapolis, Indiana, property at 29th and Gary Street, Gary, Indiana.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilman Brewer?
Mr. President, the same thing with this one here. The overview was given. You still have to allow the public to speak just to get it.
And you're moving for passage, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Move for passage CPO 2020-42. The same overview that was given for 41 is for this one also too, but you still have to allow the public if anyone would like to speak for 42 also.
And who's going to second that motion?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. This time we'll have any public comment about CPO 2020-42. We have 2 screens tonight, so I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Seeing and hearing no one, and assuming, I will ask, are there any questions or discussion for council members on CPO 2020-42? Okay. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-41 and CPO 2020-42 pass and are so ordered.
CPR 2020-11, a resolution of the Gary Common Council confirming resolution number 2020-07 that established and designated a certain area of the city of Gary, Indiana as the Broadway Lofts Economic Revitalization Area, to which deductions from excess value may be requested by an applicant to the Common Council of the city of Gary pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Councilman Ronald Brewer, Councilman at Large, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, and the Office of Community Investment.
Councilman Brewer.
Mr. President, I will ask if CPR 2020-11 be deferred to our September 1st meeting at 6 p.m. Reason for the CPA, there are issues with the CPA, and if we pass this tonight, those changes will go directly, have to be applied to CPR 2020-11.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Questions or discussion at this time? Seeing and hearing. Is this?
It was Pete.
Okay, Mr. Swigert.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject, and I apologize. I certainly understand, and I want to give everybody as much time as they want to review this. But we did have a pretty good and I thought positive conversation at the meeting last week, and was very hopeful to come forward here. We're really risking this development, and the timeframes are starting to create a risk to this project, and further deferral of this decision ultimately will have big ramifications and possibly prevent the project from occurring. We've got cliff dates and deadlines. This request for tax abatement was first submitted October of 2019. We are nearing a year, and I'm still trying here, and we've got a cliff date. The project has to be completed by the end of next year. And if we don't get started in August, or we're risking winter conditions, which are going to add $500,000 worth of costs that are going to drastically make this project infeasible. I've been fighting an uphill battle trying to keep these resources in place. Just last week, we lost $300,000 worth of local resources. We're plugging holes and trying to keep this thing afloat. I'm only mentioning this because I want you to know that there is a potential dire risk to this development and ultimately the future developments if we can't get this across the finish line quickly. I mean, there are some serious risks to the project, and we want to get it done. We want to bring $11 million worth of new investment to you. It was structured specifically to be able to fit. And ultimately, when we finally filled the gaps, we've lost ground, and additional commitments or requirements have come forward. I honor whatever decisions you make here, but I really want you to consider about, whether this 2 weeks is that important to further talk about this when we've been talking about. I think my first discussion with council even on this was May. And so we're trying to do everything we can. All the things that are CBA we're committing to for the future phases, but this one's really tricky when, this thing was all funded and prepped and propped and supported by the city before the CBA even existed. We want to make commitments. We're trying our best. I just only wanted to express the true risk that we're facing now. I've really got some pressure from our lenders and investors. And if we can't get this across the finish line over the next couple of weeks, it is really at risk.
Mr. Swigert, I have a couple questions, and I certainly understand the sentiment you expressed. I think what Councilman Brewer is suggesting that, are you comfortable with the current CBA? Because if we pass this tonight, you're subject to it in its form as passed in December of 2019.
My more recent request and what I've been trying to present to the committees as well as to council is that I'm requesting some leniency from the CBA under the premise we're happy to make the 15% contribution via the tax abatement. We found ways to fund it. We're willing to fund the 15% from the tax abatement. But beyond that, some of the CBA requirements simply would require rebidding and delay the project drastically, as well as increase costs to the project. We really went through a process here in good faith with city direction and city involvement that got us to this point. So yeah, I do hope you'll consider, the city council has the ability to consider leniency or waivers from the CBA requirements. I'm not necessarily proposing even waivers from them all, but certainly to maybe help us allow for the fact that we've already bid the development and it's really ready to sit here and sign a construction contract. Yeah, we are hopeful that you'll consider allowing us to move forward with the project as stand.
Well, I guess my concern is that the CBA is already law. And so I don't know about leniency in terms of it. If we
right in the CBA,
this,
it clearly says that at the council's permission or decision, they can waive all and parts of the CBA agreement.
I think it says.
My hopes is maybe there will be some leniency and concession here based on our timing, under the premise that we're committing to fully all the CBA requirements in the future phases. The CBA does allow for that.
I want to acknowledge Councilwoman Atkins. This is in her district, and she's also she's been very involved with this. Councilwoman Atkins.
Thank you. So I think that the wording that Pete is referring to is the last section, and it states that if the council or I believe it is the verbiage, the administration or the executor requests any type of leniency or waiver to the CBA, it can be considered. So, that's something that we can talk about as it relates to phase one. But Pete just stated that there was commitments already spoken about for phase two. And I'm not sure if I'm aware of what those commitments are. And then also, is that those commitments, have they been in writing, or are you saying those commitments as it relates to the CBA as the language is as today?
The commitment that I was attempting to make for phase two is that whatever form of the CBA exists, we are happy, whatever form of the CBA ultimately council chooses to have in place, we are happy to honor those commitments. The commitment I'm making right now is based off of the existing CBA. That's what we provided to our general contractor as far as trying to price accordingly. So the commitments are certainly to meet whatever existing approved up-to-date CBA is in existence. I really don't know what changes are being proposed or not being proposed in the CBA myself. So yeah, my commitment that I'm attempting to make is if administration and council is willing to do some waivers and provide some leniency on phase one from the CBA, just based on the timing of the development and the risk of the schedule. We are 100% committed to any and all meeting any and all requirements of the CBA on phase two and phase three. We're happy to put that in writing. In addition to that, ultimately, we're going to have to ask the administration for some support letters that would provide commitments that will help our application score well. And we would be 100% happy for those commitment letters to note the developer's condition required obligations to meet the CBA requirements.
Mr. Chair.
So what does that mean? Letters from the administration in terms of what? Or if the mayor wants to address that, maybe you all have talked about that. What does that mean?
Mr. President, if possible, I'd like to go ahead of the mayor.
Councilman Lay.
Okay, we have a pending amendment coming through on 9305. And I noticed you said this particular project is for the city of Gary. The tax abatement is not in the 4th district, and I certainly stay in the 4th district. It's over the entire city. So I would suggest we not send it back to the committee. Why are we gambling? Again, I think the CBA, if we're talking about the committee, I don't see how we can deal with it as is. We would be talking about extending it even further if my amendment went through, because we got to go through interviews and we got to go through resumes to put this commission together. I would suggest we can't afford as a community to lose projects like this. It's going to become harder and harder for the city of Gary to encourage developers to come here and do something. So I would suggest we not send it back to the committee. We take a vote, we pass it, and then let it fall as it may based upon the amendment 9305. Because even after it's amended, it don't have to go through. I mean, certainly that could be, in fact, vetoed if the mayor so chose to do so. So that's all I'm saying. Let it go through, and we'll deal with 9305, afterwards.
I guess I just, Mayor Prince.
Well, I can defer, Mr. Chair. I'll wait until after your comments.
No, I was just wanted to get clarification because the current CBA is the one that I understand there was problems with and concerns about in terms of being in compliance. That is the existing law, the existing rule that exists today.
I understand.
So if we in fact pass this tonight, you're subject to the existing CBA. And whatever we do in the future and however it's done, whenever that happens, if it happens, may not necessarily apply to the tax abatement that's being granted tonight.
Well, we could make it retroactive now. This is not a criminal law. In other words, we can make this amendment retroactive. In other words, again, because this has been sent back to committee numerous times, that now we have run into a problem simply of time. The gentleman, and I certainly have never spoken to him, he is laying it out before the council that you have $11 million project. And so if we decide that 9305 continues as it is, then he has indicated he would be subject to that, asking for some leniency in terms of what's in that document. And I believe that can be granted by the council. Other than that, when do we pass 9305? We're going to go into a committee meeting, I guess at some point. I don't know what date that is. We got to then discuss all of that with the mayor and the administration. So we're moving probably into September. I think September the 1st would be our first council meeting. I said somewhere in here. That's what I'm suggesting. He's indicated he would buy into it and ask for leniency. He also has indicated that this project started well ahead of that CBA. So again, the council could say it does not apply. It's possible for us to say that. That's no problem. In other words, we would say that will not apply to this project. We can do that. I don't see the gamble. I don't see why we would gamble on this. I mean, it may serve some people, some of the councilman's purpose, but I don't think it's a good purpose. I think
Mr. Chair.
Mayor Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start with the councilman's last comment. And that being is that I don't believe that because this project was started well before the CBA, from the administration's perspective, we don't believe that the CBA should actually apply to this. Having said that, another comment I was actually going to reserve for the committee meeting, but I think it's relevant now, particularly because what we're essentially talking about, the councilman, myself, and at least perhaps another council member or two on the body are suggesting that we recraft the original CBA. And to that extent, it's my opinion, and it's been that since the beginning of this term, is that there were issues and impediments with the existing CBA, and the most effective way to address that would be to repeal the present CBA and to start over again and draft one that's certainly acceptable and amenable to both the administration and the council, but equally important, friendlier to business. This particular project is a prime example of exactly why we feel that the present CBA doesn't necessarily fit everything. It's not a one size fit all. We believe that there should probably be a menu of options when you craft an agreement like that. But as it relates to the particular Broadway Lofts project, in addition to the timing of the CBA relative to the project, we also believe that there are benefits that are actually built into the project that certainly would warrant excuse or certainly a reprieve from this particular project being applicable, or the CBA being applicable to this project. And I would ask the council consider passing it this evening as well.
I will just say that to me, it absolutely, the CBA applies. It wouldn't matter to me if the discussion started 100 years ago. The moment at which you bring the ordinance for the tax abatement, that is when the CBA would come into force. And we know that no CBA, no ordinance for a tax abatement came before this body until after December of 2019. So the CBA absolutely applies. There's no question in my mind that it would apply. And let me just ask, when we talk about community benefits, and I think it's important, who is, Mr. Schweigert, who is the retail tenant for this Broadway Lofts development? What exactly are we creating at 6th and Broadway? Who's your retail tenant?
Our retail tenant is Northwest Indiana Community Action Agency.
And what do they do?
They're going to be providing healthcare and education.
Okay. Is that a WIC office?
It's a women, infant, children health clinic.
Okay, got you.
Yes, which employs people and provides health care to residents of Gary. Right now, they provide WIC throughout the county. One of the locations that's underserved for this is Gary. And what a great opportunity for residents of Gary to be able to find some of their healthcare services right in town.
And where are there other WIC offices in Northwest Indiana?
I would have to do a Google search, to be honest, but they do have other WIC offices throughout the county.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
other
Chair.
questions, Mayor Prince?
Well, sure, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to offer one adjustment to perhaps my statement. And so you're a learned attorney, and I'll certainly defer to your opinion, at least at this point, that it does apply. I guess a more relevant question is, should it apply? And to that extent, I would say absolutely not.
Well, and I thank you for your commendation, but I would just say that it applies if it's triggered by the CBA. And when we look at the benefit that is being granted in terms of the tax abatement over the 10-year period, I think it clearly triggers the CBA ordinance that at least 4 of the current members of this council voted for in December. So are we saying that the CBA is not triggered by the Broadway Lofts tax abatement?
I would like to make the point that our application for tax abatement was made October of 2019.
And to whom was
3
that
months.
application sent?
To whom was that application sent?
Mhm.
It was sent to the previous administration.
Was it sent to this council?
No, it was forwarded through the administration.
And I guess my concern is that you obviously, and I'm sensitive to real estate development, let me be clear, and I'm glad that there's development coming. But is it not the case that January, February, March, April, May went by before this tax abatement got this body and no one in redevelopment informed you that this would be a requirement? So 5 months you were in discussion.
We approached the new administration in January 20, I think it was January 27th. We met with them and got them up to speed. And I don't know that they knew it at that point. I found out about the potential of the CBA March, April, I'm sorry, maybe April, May, probably April. And I do, certainly we tried to address it as we could. But I just want to make the points. It's very clear, and I understand the intent of the CBA, and we want to accommodate and fulfill the goals of the CBA. At the same time, none of the goals can be fulfilled. None of the development, affordable housing and new housing options in general are so lacking in Gary, and it's such a need to the community. I mean, the neighborhoods located around here have lost half of their housing stock, and that still exists is not in the greatest of condition. We're going to be providing some really, really high quality, cutting edge product that's there to serve residents of the community and provide very, low rent rates and provide a very high quality. All of these things are true community benefits that we may not be able to deliver without that. And I think that it was very wise of the council to approve the community benefits agreement with the concession that council and administration have the right to consider otherwise, because there are a lot of other unique things that developments typically can't do that this development can do. But ultimately, there has to be economic feasibility, and we're stretching every threshold we can just to get to where we are, saying, yes, we can get closed if you can give us some concession here.
Mr. President, I'm not sure I agree with your conclusion on what the law is. Why don't we pass it, get it out of the way, and then we will debate or have time to research the law. I think you're shooting from the seat of your pants when you say March, April, May, all of these various months. Again, why gamble? If you're right and 9305 is in place, then it's subject to 9305. If you're wrong and we don't pass it, we've lost possibly a project. I don't understand it. And another question you asked, I don't care what's in there as long as they're paying the necessary rent. You seem to not like WIC. Again, I don't like signs out on the highway either. But again, so and all of this stuff that comes out of the first district. So again, I'm suggesting we now do something that benefits the city of Gary as opposed to your district. And we go ahead and pass it. If you're legally right, then fine. They have to go by it. If you're wrong, they don't. He has indicated, I believe, several times that he has no problem attempting to apply to it. He just simply would ask for a waiver, as I understand it. So as opposed to him finding all of the WICs in the county and all of that, why don't we go ahead, call for a vote to pass this? And I think if the council decides to vote against this project, then, well, we lose money. And I think the citizens of Gary should take a look very carefully at this council.
Well, thank you, Councilman Lay, and I just want to respond to those attacks on my character. I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to respond to that.
And I'm going to respond to your response. I'm going to respond to your. No, I've watched you for 8 months, man. I've watched you for 8 months. I'm not casting dispersion. Everything that you bring up comes out of the first district. You're the president of this council. and everything is coming from one district, even down to acknowledging when a person speaks, they live in the first district. So I'm not trying to cast a dispersion on you. I'm simply asking you to take a vote. That's all.
Let me be clear. Number one, there is no shooting from the hip. It was a very relevant question to ask about whether or not the CBA would apply before we pass this tax abatement, if that's what the pleasure of the body does. As it relates to signage in the first district, I'm not going to waste the council's time on that. But I think
You've
we all
already done
recognize
that.
the importance.
You've done that.
We've already recognized the importance of tourism for the city. And we also know the importance of market rate housing. I know that low income housing tax credits are very important. I know that developer fees are very important. And I know that we know the Gary Housing Authority pulled out of this project. And so I understand.
Wait, I just want to clarify that that's not correct whatsoever, what you just said.
What is the $300,000 that you lost from local
The
investors?
Gary Housing Authority is still in this development. They are providing some subsidies to the development. They did commit $300,000 to this development, and they intended to. They unfortunately just have a challenge delivering those funds. They are supportive of the project. They are just unable to deliver a fund that they committed.
So the Gary Housing Authority will not be given the $300,000.
They will not, but that does not mean that they
Okay.
pulled out of the development.
Okay, well, I rephrase that. They will not be given the $300,000.
They will not be able to give us $300,000 that they committed to us because they were incorrect in thinking that they could.
Thank you. Any other
Mr.
questions
Chair.
or discussion? Mayor Prince?
Well, Mr. Chair, just a couple other comments, and I'd certainly appreciate all the spirited debate, and hopefully this particular vote comes out favorable. I think I made it clear or retracted my statement in terms of whether it applied or not, and I'm certainly not prepared or qualified to argue that. But again, my point was whether it should or not. And just to add one other point to that, the fact that there's a health initiative component to it, to me, even suggests more why it shouldn't. Lastly, and I'm almost certain that certainly veteran members of the council and perhaps some of the new members have heard this sentiment being expressed by some, whether it be contractors or developers, that the city is not open for business. City of Gary is not open. And, although I certainly don't agree with it, I think actions like this or votes like this certainly will either confirm or repudiate that statement. And again, I would hope, as Councilman Lay called for, that this particular project is voted on this evening. And I believe you probably are aware of how I would hope the outcome would be.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer.
my reasoning for moving it back to the next council meeting was to look out for the developer that's in part, and definitely don't want to put him in a catch-22, which this is exactly what it's doing with the CBA running neck to neck. I have no problem if that's the pleasure of this body to take it for a vote. We can do just that. But I didn't want the developer to be subject to something, these changes, or what we have discovered was inside the CBA. He would have to comply to it. But I would rescind my motion, and I would take it for a vote if that's the pleasure of the body.
If I may, this is Rodney Poe, Mr. Chair. If I could,
Sure.
this council meeting was actually set for a public hearing on this tax resolution, whereby, just like the previous motion before the council, this actually has to be open for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Any other question, discussion of council members before we open for public comment? Seeing none, we will open for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who desires to speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. McCready.
Yes.
First
yes.
district, by the way. Thank you.
First district, absolutely, in the city of Gary. And I might want to remind Mr. Lay that he represents the entire city and not just the 4th District. I think there's been a conflating of issues here, conflating of the idea of the project itself with the CBA, and somehow one gets in the way of the other. That is not the case. The CBA extends itself to any project that is triggered by a request for a public subsidy. And what that triggers then is a discussion of the issues of local hiring, job training, and a give back to the community. That has not happened yet. We tried to do that earlier. We tried to find out about the workforce, and we never even found that out. What we got was a lot of information about the project, and the project itself is what it is. But that has nothing to do with the CBA. The CBA applies to new construction projects in the city of Gary. And I don't know whether the council, I sent them out to every single council member, some negotiating points that we would like to make, because we thought that we were going to be able to sit down with the council and, hammer out whatever changes we needed to make to the original CBA. And we were willing to make some changes ourselves, and I sent them out to everyone. And so everyone should have gotten them. Whether they read them or not, I don't know. But we are willing to talk. What we see on the other side is not a willing to talk. They want to steamroller. They want to stealth bomb this whole process and go back to business as usual. And I ask you, where has business as usual gotten us? Has it improved our unemployment rate, which still stands at 40%? Has it increased job training? Has it led to any corporate donations to communities in this city to help make life better? No, no, no. And if these things were happening, I would think that there would be a big amount of publicity about these things. We know they're not happening. What this ordinance does is give the city administration and the people in the city leverage when developers come and want our money. In this case, $660,000 over 10 years. I believe we said when we sent out some of our points that we could negotiate on, we said that right now in the ordinance it says 15%. We could lower that depending on the project. Depending on the project, we could negotiate something lower. I know people were all bent out of shape about, this developer having to pay 30% of their subsidy. But, it's just amazing to me. This is all free money. This is all free money that this developer is getting. And fine, I'm glad they're getting it, and I have no problem with the project itself, except that when I look at the application for the project to the state of Indiana, it's supposed to be an anti-poverty project. How can it be an anti-poverty project when there's no local hiring? And if there is local hiring, why haven't we been told of the plan? They are also supposed to have an expert on anti-poverty strategies. We would like to meet with that person. We would like to know, what are those anti-poverty strategies? But as far as we're concerned, the biggest anti-poverty move that this city can make is to start having people have jobs. And that involves job training and local hiring. And that's what this ordinance is about. It is not a draconian measure to push people out of the city. And Mayor Prince, if I may say this, I have lived here since 1978, and I have heard that the city of Gary is never open for business. I have heard that over and over and over again. That's always the excuse that people say, well, I'm not coming there because they're not open for business. Mayor Karen went through all of that in 8 years. We've been through this over and over and over again. This ordinance does not stop any developer from coming.
Point of order.
Excuse me. No, excuse me. I'm not finished.
Excuse me. She's way out of line.
I am not finished.
Mr. President, who are you going to recognize?
Councilman Lay.
Yes. First of all, I know exactly where I live, and I know that, in fact, I was elected throughout this entire city. Under no circumstances, please don't interrupt. I know it's hard for you to call me counsel.
You interrupted me just now,
No,
sir.
you used up too much time.
Councilman Lay.
And first of all, I don't believe you have a right to sit down with anyone. I don't see how you're the face of anything in this city to negotiate. I certainly will not sit down with you to negotiate anything. Oh, you can laugh if you want to. You know I mean that. I have no.
I am laughing.
You can't even come up with a 1024A to give yourself legitimacy. Therefore, I'm not sure I can trust. It's called truth and veracity. I'm not sure I can trust anything that you say. In other words, there have been people here, including myself, that have been over the concentrated employment program, new careers. We have been training African Americans for years. They will not allow us in the union. Why don't you go to the union? I can't go there because I'm African American. You're white, you can go there. Tell them to certify these programs and we get jobs. But other
Yes,
than
we'd
that,
like to do that,
I don't think
Councilman.
you should be allowed to chastise a member of this council or the mayor of this city. And that's basically what she's attempting to do. She sent out letters saying, I basically said I've lied about contacting the Internal Revenue Service. I didn't lie about that. They sent a letter. I didn't manufacture this letter. So again, Mr. Chairman, I think, Mr. President, at least, I think we should go along with the vote. If 9305 stands, it stands. The gentleman has indicated he will comply with it. She has no right to say what we're going to reduce money to. She's going to reduce the money. Where does she get that authority? We now have 10 members on the council. So I call for the vote.
Well, we're still open for public comment. Councilman Brewer.
We are open for public comment still going on, and we must keep the time.
Right.
I'll keep time if the clerk is not.
Thank you, Ms. McCready. You've been heard.
Welcome.
Thank
Thank you.
Any other members for comment, public, any folks from the public for comment about this order? Mr. Mosley.
No, that's Rex Blackwell.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say, just as a tax-paying citizen here in the city of Gary, I really appreciate all of the discussion, lively debate, and heartfelt feelings about issues of importance. But I must say this, the reason I need to speak out is signage in every state that I've ever lived in for business communities is extremely important. And when I hear people say that it's not, I automatically start thinking about the various signs that I have seen in the city. Now, Mr. Lay, I got to know you, as a matter of fact. I think I voted for you because I saw your sign. And I got to know you that way. So I guess I would say you obviously think it's important, and it certainly worked for you because it introduced you to me. And the same thing for businesses that are struggling and trying to make it in the city of Gary. And I just want to raise my hand as a person that's been working as a volunteer for a year and a half, trying to bring this thing forward. I am pleading with the council and the mayor to push forward any effort that's out there to try and help these businesses that are here in the city of Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell.
I'm still there for you.
All right. Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to comment?
Yes, this is Emmett Mosley. Yes, I would just like to say this. I'm a businessman, and business is important. But I live in Gary, and for years I have worked on behalf of community citizens in Gary on many issues. We're not Johnny come lately on this. We started out many years ago talking about building business, having the right taxes in place, having the right systems in place to get our folks working. I would like for people to drive around and talk to people. Have you been to the casino? I live 5 minutes from the casino, and I get to the casino every week, and I talk to the employees there. The food African Americans that work there, and every time they say, we need more. When I look at being in business and talking to people in this community, they need a means of taking care of responsibility. And that means having a job, not leaving out of this city. We have young people who say, I'm not coming back to this city, there's no jobs. If you drive around, the biggest project is the street project where they're putting down the major pipes. If you go to those sites, nobody at those sites look like me, okay? So I don't know all the details about this project. I know this organization, their office is off of US 30, their main office is off of US 30. There are many organizations that are working with disenfranchised and the downtrodden here in Gary. So who is going to be at these, who is going to be owners of these projects? That's a question, okay? Because there are many projects that are created and it don't fulfill what they talk about fulfilling, making sure that residents have places to stay. So I don't know who these laws are for, okay? I know that just down the street on 11th Avenue that there are many buildings that are boarded up that were low-income buildings. I know that they're right down the street from me, the housing development Concord, that's gone. Down the street the other way,
Mr. President,
Ivanhoe.
Councilman Brewer, I think is acknowledging that your time is up, Mr. Mosley, but thank you.
Okay.
Any other for public hearing? Any other folks from the public would like to speak?
Yes, I would.
Okay, I don't know who it is, but you may begin.
Sorry, this is Dr. Michaela Spangenberg.
Okay, thank you.
So the CBA legislation could be the best thing that's happened for the city in a long time. To me, the fact that instead of taking that legislation and improving it for the public good, what seems to have happened is this effort to throw a wrench in the works and prevent it from, being recognized as law as it was originally voted in. And to make it a less democratic process is really discouraging. I'm very happy that at last we have public comment during these meetings. I think that's great. I think that's moving back toward a democratic process. But the people of Gary need more of a voice in these processes. The council already has a voice. The council has, the planning and development committee. The mayor already has a voice. The people need to be able to come to the table because, as people have said, the process as it stands already without a CBA is not working for the benefit of the people or the city. And when we look at things, we've had a law on the books since the 70s that was supposed to address the lack of hiring of people in Gary, in particular Black people in Gary, on these projects. And that law has never been abided by in any meaningful way or been able to be enforced. So we need something. We can't go another, 50 years without real change in the city if we're going to survive. And honestly, a lot of the things that I've heard some of the council people say have just seemed to be very disingenuous in terms of the 501c4 status and this and that. Like we all know the IRS is not going to email something to someone. We all know that the difference between a C4 and a C3 is literally just so that people in this organization can even have these conversations with government officials, because the IRS definition of what lobbying is very expansive. And it's just very disappointing to me as a resident to see so much done to undermine this process. If people were going to amend it to make it more democratic, to make, whoever oversaw this be elected or something like that, that would be one thing. But to sit here and listen week after week to these discussions of either how this thing should never come to pass or how the government should have more control of it, you know, we definitely don't need that. We need our council and our mayor and our government to be willing to work with us. Thank you.
I think that Ms. Tammy Davis is going to speak at this time. You're muted. Okay, thank you.
I'm unmuted. Thank you so very much, President Godwin, and I am appreciative of the discussion that we are having this evening. I had an opportunity to sit with members of the community, those that have spoken this evening in regards to the community benefits agreement as it currently sits. And I expressed my concerns as it was written and passed on last year. And many of my concerns have been addressed this evening. One of the things that challenges us, and I've been working in the areas of contract and labor compliance now for over 20 years. One of the things that challenges us is that we pass policies, regulations, ordinances, and they sound good at the time, but unless they are provided with the support to truly enforce it and get us ultimately where we want to go, we continue to have regulations and policies that sit for decades and generations and never getting to the ultimate point of where we want to be. And as the CBA is presented now, as it was passed, it does not provide or allow for all the support that would be needed to get us to the ultimate goal of having more local Gary, African-American minority residents hired or trained. For example, with this particular project, Broadway Lofts, I know that there are federal funds involved. They are subject to Section 3, which requires the payment of Davis-Bacon wages, which far exceed the living wage that is presented in the bargaining agreement. And I, as well as many of you, have heard countless times how developers and contractors complain about having to pay more to hire us, right? I know you've heard that. And when we forced them to, particularly when we're talking about the returning of the 15%, those developers, they're just going to build it, you know, right into the project. And so they'll be seeking greater amounts in subsidies just to account for that loss, because that's their standard operating practice as it is right now of when they think they're not going to be in compliance, they just build those fees in
time.
All right. Thank
want.
you, Councilman Brewer, and thank you, Ms. Davis. Perhaps this is something we can follow up on in the committee hearing on the CBA, but I think you raised some very good points for consideration, very thoughtful points and respectful. Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Yes. May I speak?
Yes, absolutely.
President Godwin and City Council members, Doreen Carey, resident of the City of Gary and the First District. I just want to say that notwithstanding how you decided to vote on the tax abatement tonight, I really look forward to the opportunity to have the discussion that you've put forward here between the community, business, the council, and the administration on this really important question that clearly people want to have input in and feel would benefit the city, and the opportunity to come up with a solution and hopefully some kind of consensus so that we all see the opportunities that are available then for citizen involvement and benefits to the community from development. So I just want to say thank you for making that possible for people in the committee and other members of the public to participate in that decision-making process. So I think that that's the direction that we ought to be looking, is to find that consensus and hopeful and possible agreement on the best possible CBA for the city. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other members of the public for comment? Okay.
Councilman Godwin, do you mind if I just do a little follow-up?
Sure,
at this point?
absolutely.
And thanks everybody for their time. One thing that I hope everybody says is we're just working hard. I'm wanting to work hard for the community area. We want to bring.
Councilman Brewer?
Make sure you close public portion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to do that first, or?
Public portion is closed. I didn't see anyone else. And so we'll go back to Mr. Swiger.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to make a few points. We have had substantial community meetings along the way. And I know that for those who might be looking at the last 6 months, you might not see as much as you would hope, but this has been a 3-year development that started with a workshop, including 50 people and multiple community meetings, planning commissions, city council meetings. And we've always been available. I've always made myself available. I've answered every call, email, question that's been asked to me. And I've always been welcomed further involvement. When we first learned about the community benefits agreement, we welcomed the public meeting that was required by that. We did meet with the community benefits group and tried to show them the things we could do and the things that were more challenging to the development. We offered up additional public meetings and no additional requests or welcoming of that was ever provided back. So I really hope that, and this goes to the group that's on the community benefits board. We're happy to still answer your questions and try and learn how we can help meet your goals. We never stopped talking with them. We've never stopped communicating. We also just want you to know that there is local involvement with this development. There are Gary-based subcontractors that will work this development. There are MBE subcontractors that will work this development. Women-owned businesses, other businesses in Lake County and subcontractors in Lake County are all part of this. And yes, we have made commitments to Section 3. We will be making local hiring as part of this. One of the requirements of Section 3 that's a great benefit is as our subcontractors are hiring new people to do the job, a certain percentage of those are required to be local hires. And in fact, through the CBA board, we've been introduced to 2 organizations that are going to help us link our subcontractors to local hires. So all of these things you're talking about, we're still working on them. We've never faltered in continuing to work on them. We want to bring that to its fullest extent. And we're just hopeful we can get this passed and get closed and show you what a good job we can do. And then with that, we've never not been supportive of the CBA. The only challenges it has brought to us is that in the 11th hour of phase 1, it became a new component. We're fully committed to it in phase 2 and 3, whatever iteration of that is. If it's the existing scenario, we will find ways to make it work. If it's a different scenario that the council desires more, we'll make that work. That's not an issue. So we hope that you'll consider our request, and thank you for your time. And sorry if I rambled there a little bit. I just wanted everyone to know we're still here. We're still available for questions and comments and trying to get this done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion of council members?
Mr. President.
Councilman Lay.
Very quickly. I'm not sure why people think I'm somehow removing this commission from the people. What I'm suggesting is that this commission that we're talking about creating, anyone can apply. Anyone in the city of Gary. Now, I do have some restrictions. I don't know if Mr. Poe has put it in there. They must submit a resume. They must submit themselves for an interview, and they must be residents of the city of Gary. That's the only restriction that I have. when they start talking about this meeting between people and the council, we are a second-class city. They're basically talking about town hall meetings. In other words, we have been elected, as someone explained to me today, I've been elected 6 times, that it's not a town hall where we can bring the entire public together. This would be I'm going to have to suggest it's a few people. There's nothing wrong with a few people, but it's not a town hall. We would have to open it up for the entire community of Gary to come in. We're a second-class city. The decisions are to be made by the legislative branch and the executive branch. That's statutory. That's who makes the decision. So again, if you now decide that on various ordinances, you're going to start opening up town hall meetings, you would have to publish that to this entire city that come in and treat it like it's a town hall. I would suggest the authority as well as the responsibility is in the legislative branch and the executive branch. And certainly anyone that's on the committee of the name that has been sent to us, they certainly have a right to apply by sending a resume and submitting themselves for an interview and being a resident of the city of Gary. That's the only requirement I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other members of the council? Questions or discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer?
I want to make sure that I properly, I withdrew my motion and making sure that didn't no one second that motion.
Second the withdrawal.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or just, we don't need to, it's withdrawn. That's all we need to do with that, right? Any other comments or questions about the resolution?
So, Mr. President, what I need to do is I'll make a motion to pass CPR 2020-11 on third and final.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Any further? We've already had an overview. Is there any other questions or discussion? I just want to make sure everyone's had a chance.
Just one last question for Pete. And I know you're definitely up against a time clock here, so there's no extra time that you have. You definitely need to get this done tonight. Just want to be clear.
Yeah, we had a closing meeting last week and they were targeting the 27th for closing.
Okay.
You know, I can't literally say it'll close on the 27th, but there's 2 to 3 items that are the big, heavy final things to finalize, and this is certainly the biggest.
Okay. All right.
I would just, all right, thank you, Councilman Brewer. Any other members? All right. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Abstain.
Mr. President, the vote is 7 yes, 1 abstention.
For 7 yes and 1 abstention, CPR 2020-11 passes and is so ordered.
Mr. President, it's pending ordinances and resolutions on third and final.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Before we move on, Mr. President, if I could.
Mr. Poe.
Following the confirmatory resolution, we do have the Form SB1 resolution as well. The confirmatory only designates the SBERN.
I really can't hear you that well.
I've been trying. I came downstairs hoping my connection was better.
It's really like an echo of sorts.
I'm at City Hall in the hallway, locked out of my office, so I apologize. That's probably why.
Okay.
Ultimately, the Form SB1 resolution, it does not require a public hearing or discussion by the public. Only the members of the Common Council, for a vote for the motion to essentially approve by the presiding officer. So I've got Dan Bowditch on the line, and probably his audio is better than mine if you'd like to explain.
Mr. Bowditch?
Yes, sir. I am on the line.
So,
Can you hear me?
Councilman Brewer, I think he's raising a.
What are we talking about? Which one are we talking about here? Because it sounded like we went to something else.
There were two resolutions on the table for us. There was the confirmatory resolution, which I believe was just acted on, and then SB1 resolution that I believe also needs action. I'm trying to make out what Rodney had said. If I understand correctly, he was saying we also need to take action on the SB1. However, it does not require a public hearing.
Correct.
So, but it's not on our agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Okay.
So SB1, when was that introduced? Mr. Pohl, I think you're muted.
Introduced at the same time. Both were submitted.
I think Mr. King, you're unmuted.
Oh, okay.
Attorney King, you're unmuted.
Mr. President, can you hear? I'll try.
Who's Mr. Pohl? So what are we doing here? You're saying there's another resolution. There's no other matter on the agenda for third and final.
Oh, okay. Maybe there was miscommunication. Both were submitted at the same time. The resolution for the confirmatory resolution and the SB1. The SB1 was included with the confirmatory resolution.
There's a separate resolution with its own number?
I was under the impression it was. I don't have my agenda in front of me, but if it's not on the agenda, it's not on the agenda.
Madam Clerk, are you aware of another resolution that was submitted in any reading heretofore?
I'm not.
Well, we're discussing that in committee.
Madam Clerk?
Yes. No.
Are you aware of this resolution?
No, I'm not.
Mr. President,
Ms. Attorney Colvin?
in the past, the form has always just been a part of the document signed with the resolution, the confirmatory resolution. There wasn't anything separate. When the council voted on the resolution, it was voting also at the same time to sign the form.
That's correct.
So
really what needs to happen is you just need to sign the form. There doesn't need to be a separate motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So I think council pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
CPO 2020-40, an amendment to ordinance 5881, section 2-1074K, regarding the hiring Academy certified police officers in the city of Gary, Indiana, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Chief Brian Evans, Gary Police Department.
Councilman Williams.
Mr. President, I move for passage of CPO 2020-40 on second reading with a committee hearing set for 8/25/2020 with a public hearing on 9/1/2020.
And what time will that be?
6 o'clock.
Okay. Was there a second?
Second.
Okay, been seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Any questions or discussion? Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-40 passes on second reading with a Public Safety Committee meeting on August 25th, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. via Zoom, and a public hearing on September 1st, 2020, also via Zoom.
CPR 2020-12, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Gary, Indiana, as it relates to an assessed valuation reduction tax abatement for real property vacant building deduction of Alliance Steel Corporation, as approved by resolution number 3050 pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1 for the purpose of modifying and amending the project development agreement, modifying and amending the original Form SB1BD dated November the 2nd, 2020, and granting a waiver of noncompliance as it applies to an untimely and late filing of the January the 1st, 2019 Form CF-1 BBD and the Form 322 BBD to the Office of the Lake County, Indiana Auditor, and the submission of said forms to the designating body to report compliance with the original Form SB1-BBD, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Indiana Redevelopment Commission, and the Indiana Office of Community Investment.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer,
I move to suspend the rules and pass on all three readings. CPR 2020-12.
Second.
it's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Brown. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, we are suspending the rules. We're suspending the rules to passes on all three readings. We will now need to vote on the substance of CPR 2020-12. Councilman Brewer, are you moving for passage on third
Yes.
and final?
Moving for passage on third and final CPR 2020-12.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Brown. Any questions or discussion? I would ask for a brief overview. Is Attorney Colvin, are you providing that? Or someone else?
Mr. President, I think we have the petitioner.
Okay.
This is John Westerkamp. I'd ask for recognition from the chair.
Yes, thank you, sir.
And I'm sorry, I'm seeing that I look pretty dark, but hopefully everybody can hear me. If you can't, let me know. I'm counsel to Alliance Steel. I represent them, and they moved to Gary, Indiana, made Gary their new home. In 2019, we signed a development agreement with the city of Gary in November of 2018. What's happened is that the assessed value went up double of what was anticipated by both parties. And as most of you know, the abatement is on the increment of the tax of the taxes. And so this effectively eviscerated the abatement that the client was getting. It wasn't anticipated by Gary, wasn't anticipated by the client. And so what this amendment does, what this resolution does, is to try to fulfill the expectations of both parties so that Alliance Steel enjoys of moving to the city of Gary. And I've spoken with the CFO. They've held interviews at the city building downtown. They're looking to hire people. The CFO had a conversation with someone on the redevelopment commission recently about how to get more Gary residents hired by Alliance Steel. But with the economy being the way it is, with the steel service industry itself being an industry of origins, and with the virus, they're struggling right now. So this resolution is significant to my client. And so I just wanted to present that brief overview for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Westerkamp.
Absolutely.
Any questions or discussion of Mr. Westerkamp or about this matter? Okay. And just confirming, Mr. Pohl, this does not require, I should say my own attorney, Attorney Williams, this does not require any public comment, given that we're kind of reconsidering a resolution that was already passed. Attorney Williams? Attorney Williams?
I'm here, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the question.
I just wanted to be sure that there was no public comment required, given that we're kind of we're doing almost something similar to what we just did. We're just correcting an error.
Yes, you already had appropriate public comment.
Okay, so we don't need any public comment on this.
It's on, again, I couldn't hear for about 30 seconds there, but you're correcting what?
So basically a resolution, as I understand it, CPR 2020-12 is correcting the applicability of, I believe, 2020 to an abatement that was already issued last year, I believe. But it's an error that we're trying to make this year, if I'm understanding it, make 2020 applicable. I know earlier Mr. Pohl interjected and said that we needed to have public comment for an abatement of this kind. Since we're kind of opening this back up and making it, adding a particular year of applicability, I wanted to confirm whether we still needed to have public comment.
In my opinion, no, I don't believe there was a substantive change to the amendment. Therefore, again, I used this term before, it's similar to a scribbler's error. You're changing the date of applicability, and I assume that was done by mistake. Therefore, as long as there's no substantive change, it's already been afforded public comment.
Okay. Councilman Brewer?
Mr. President, for the Attorney Williams, no, it wasn't done by mistake. There was a problem with the assessed valuation where the assessed valuation was double. So the new tenant resident to the city, the benefit that we was trying to give them, we wasn't giving them anything at that time. So we want to make it right now, but that way they can enjoy the full benefit of the tax abatement.
Okay, well, that's a little different than what Councilman Godwin explained to me. In that case, no, I would say that is a substantive change, and you would have to open it up for public comment.
All right. That's what I was thinking, because I know there was a question about whether it applied now. I know it applied starting next year. So, okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that was the only change. It's just changing the year of applicability. But no, okay, now that I understand that, yeah, I agree. It should be open for public comment.
All right. Thank you. So I'll start with council members. Any council members that have questions or discussion about CPR 2020-12? Okay, we'll now open for public comment. We will keep a strict time on this. Any members of the public wish to speak? Okay. I don't see any member of the public speaking. So I will close public comment at this time. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a vote of 8-0, CPR 2020-12 passes on all three readings and is so ordered.
Mr. President, is pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we will have our mayor's report and questions of city officials. Mayor
Thank you,
Prince?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, just trying to get off mute, Mr. Chair. My apologies.
No problem.
So I have quite a bit to report. As you all know, I've missed the last several meetings, and in the interim have at least fielded multiple questions from council members and the public alike. And so to that extent, I'll try to be as brief as possible, but as thorough as possible. Also share some recent I guess, events with you and occasions. As you all know, we certainly opened the beaches last weekend. Didn't have an overabundance, perhaps due to the weather or the fact that people were used to it being closed. But in any event, we certainly did so in a responsible manner with a plan to promote social distancing and prepared to definitely control the traffic flow, which was also a problem out there. Want to talk about something that occurred over at the Department of Sustainability and Environmental Affairs. Myself, along with 200 other mayors, called on the U.S. Senate to include financial assistance to our municipal governments in the U.S. Senate CARES Act plan. Every city, town, county, and township in the country has been affected by climate change and certainly different situations that relate to specifically us, our lakeshore. And to that extent, I believe that collectively as a group of mayors, we've made some inroads and certainly have garnered the attention of those persons at the national level. I also want to commend the Common Council for their approval of a resolution here recently from our office on climate resilience and recovery. The idea here was to reduce our greenhouse emissions, obviously, in accordance with goals that were agreed upon by the U.S. Climate of Mayors. Mr. Chair, there's also a little information out of Human Resources. I've got a couple notes here, so please bear with me relative to what they're doing over there. Department of Commission for Women, actually. Recently, they have been providing safety plans and resources, as well as referrals for people affected by domestic violence. In addition to that, they teamed up with a group called Little Big Guys Moving Company, and were able to clean out 16 rooms of broken furniture that had existed in one of our city facilities for quite some time. And so I would say very gladly that that particular department, as well as others, have bought into the prospect of just starting new, reimagining Gary, if you will. And we certainly appreciate all of their efforts, as we do everyone who participates. Last meeting, I guess there were some questions about Clean Slate and the effectiveness and the costs and that, and I heard some numbers thrown out, and I'll just simply say that that particular project did not cost $500,000. I believe the number was more like $200,000. But in order to understand the full impact of it, you really have to understand what the purpose of it was. And so Clean Slate, we engaged in based on my observation, certainly during our transition period, as well as those of a senior advisor on our staff who had previously worked with them in Illinois. And basically, that particular company provides a service that no other company, certainly that I'm familiar with, certainly none around here, or any that I've encountered provide. They work on litter abatement, but more importantly, they are an enhancement to our efforts of general services, as well as our GO team, in ensuring that once a site is cleared in an area that Clean Slate is assigned to, it's done so in a more manicured fashion. It's one thing to go in and chop weeds or cut trees or clean sidewalks, but it's another thing to make it presentable and certainly welcoming for persons who visit our community and who want to consider utilizing Gary as a place to conduct business. It's a very unique program that fits our needs, I believe, explicitly. And they also are a true partner in reimagining Gary. Over the last 6 months or so, we've engaged with council members. Certainly staff has, our interim director of parks, Mr. Reeves, has interacted with each council member in an effort to identify one particular park in each district that would be designated as a gem park. But in addition to that, we've cataloged all the parks that exist and are attempting to make efforts to at least make them accessible to all the citizens. I say that to say, Mr. Chair, because, coming into this term, I definitely understood the challenges that existed and that had existed for quite some time. And we embrace those challenges, but, true progress or enhancements don't happen instantaneously. And I'm just really proud of the fact and the work that those different persons in those departments have engaged in, because I believe we are making an impact. It's evident if I share some of the numbers of the amount of trash that we've actually pulled out of the city within the last 5 weeks since we initiated this project. And to date, 936 tons of trash and debris. And that certainly didn't happen over the last month or the last 7 months. And I mention that to say is that a lot of these conditions that exist have existed for quite some time, and it's our effort to address each and every one of them. But from a realistic perspective, it's something that's going to continuously take a little bit more time. And equally important, as Councilman Weatherspoon mentioned earlier, what's really needed is buy-in, not only from the community, but certainly from council members. And I think this is a situation where everyone has to roll up their sleeves, especially if we want to see the type of progress in the time frame that we want to. And so I also spoke with those persons that Councilman Weatherspoon was speaking about. We had some very spirited conversation based off of a Facebook post, because I believe fundamentally that people want to see better neighborhoods and communities. And I also believe that people want to participate, but they need direction, and they certainly need us to do our part. And to that extent, we believe that we're doing just that. I wanted to mention the streets that the councilman spoke of earlier. I believe he said Sylvian. I'm almost certain you meant Sullivan and Maple.
Sullivan, Oak and Maple, between Oak and Maple.
Yep. So in any event, there are, and I appreciate the petition that's being circulated, but there's a couple things that we absolutely have to point out. And so I'm familiar with that location as well as the street, as we are familiar with the number of other locations that resemble that and have done so for quite some time. And the point is that paving and infrastructure is something that's going to continue to be challenging in the city. This year alone, we still, and it appears that we may not be able to do any substantial paving, largely because one of the mantras of this administration is to pay our bills. And to that extent, we started with paying paving bills that were left from last year. I just got a text that said that a section of Sullivan and Maple had been rebuilt last year. But in any event, any reports that come in, we certainly are cataloging them. And councilmen or councilmen and women, what we believe a more effective approach would be is that as we identify the areas that are the most in need of repair, that perhaps we're able to do just what was texted to me, and that is build sections of the pavement over again. I could point out a few that you all probably have driven by yourself over, the last decade or so. Forest and Hemlock, 45th Avenue from Broadway to Harrison, where Waters sits and has sat, for quite some time. The corner of 37th and Broadway, 4400 block of Jefferson Street, which is almost an exact replica of the situation that you pointed out, Councilman. And so to that extent, yes, please continue to send the reports in, but also when you speak with the constituents, there's a couple options. We certainly welcome those concerns. So please invite them to call City Hall directly, or some of you have most of you have my private cell number, and know that I'm not opposed to citizens having that, because we enjoy engaging with them and sharing accurate information, and more importantly, giving them accurate expectations as to when they can expect some improvements there. Lastly, Mr. Chair, for the sake of time, and I know you guys are probably ready to get on with some other business, I want to revisit just briefly the CBA. I believe Tammy was doing an excellent job in at least beginning to express the impact that we've had relative to procurement and compliance. And I think one of the best decisions that we've made as an administration very early on was to engage her citywide in the area of compliance. And to that extent, not only is she engaged with it, but she monitors it and sends reports to the administration daily, particularly on the casino project, as well as other projects, and showing efforts and accomplishments where we have been able to have some impact on those areas. So if you would indulge us for just a few more moments, I would like for her to share that portion during the mayor's report, because I believe it's relevant. Ms. Davis, if you will, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity, and President Godwin and council members for allowing this time. We are very excited on a lot of the progress that we have made in implementing the executive order requiring the utilization of minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. We have been successful in working with the Indiana Department of Administration's Division of Supplier Diversity to get minority businesses certified so that they would be able to be counted on not only the Hard Rock Casino project, but other projects as well. Some of the things that we have been able to implement and put in place while we are taking the time to get it right, is that the executive order covers purchases, professional services, supplies, and construction. So it's all across the board procurement as to where it is applicable. We are looking to broaden the bid preferences that are offered to our local and minority vendors. We are taking advantage of what the state of Indiana offers to municipalities and political subdivisions, such as the Gary Sanitary District, to the degree that some projects will be identified for small business set-aside programs, which means we'll be looking at procurements to specifically identify line items whereby local, meaning Gary, and small businesses would be able to compete for. We're also utilizing the veteran-owned business and the local small business preference that is also offered by the state of Indiana to local municipalities and political subdivisions. We are monitoring change orders to ensure that as vendors are making a request, particularly for an increase, we're monitoring those to ensure that there is not an adverse impact on local, minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. We're ramping up on the accountability standards. We have already denied contractors from bidding on our projects because of their continuous non-compliance with hiring local residents. We're looking to take that even a step further. So while the city's ordinance and the sanitary district's policy allows for that 10% bid preference, we will be denying contractors that privilege if they use that preference to get the work, but then in turn don't hire local people. So we are really putting a magnifying lens on how we have been executing compliance in the past and ramping it up with the type of support top down and horizontally to ensure that we are able to get local people hired and make sure that we are providing the support to our local minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. We are looking to create a compliance bond, if you will, that will serve as an incentive and even as a guarantee for vendors to comply. We see bonds utilized in other areas of construction, but we want to make sure that that is being applied universally so that vendors come in making a commitment and recognizing that it is a contractual commitment and not just a goal that they may want to aspire to, but that we're making it part of a contractual commitment. And so putting this into relevance with the community benefits agreement, which I believe we should have some variation of it. But it takes time to get it right, to make sure all of the right players and all the right pieces are in place. One of the things that our city really needs to focus on is increasing our pipeline and developing a pipeline of local talent, not just in the construction trades, but across all industries, to not just approach our developers and contractors from a punitive standpoint, but also providing them the support and the resources to even get into compliance. And that is a universal challenge citywide, that while we may find them not in compliance with hiring, we need to be able to direct them somewhere to say, here's a resource for hiring in trades, here's a resource for hiring in steel, et cetera. And so those are some of the progressive things that we are moving towards in executing the ordinance, in making sure that it's not just a document, it's not just a policy, but it is something that is going to have real impact that can be realized with our particular procurements. And again, the executive order goes beyond the CBA. It's not just about construction, but we're looking at even the smallest of procurements, and to the degree of holding department heads accountable. We want to make sure that every person who is designated as a procurement authority or a purchasing agent understands that this is a commitment that they have responsibility for executing in their respective departments. So when it comes budget time around September or October this year, we want to make sure that while they're putting together their budgets and looking at line items, that we are being proactive in identifying those line items that will be able to be procured by our local vendors. We are already seeing an impact of an increase of minority contractors being interested in bidding on our projects. We just need to help them get over the finish line. And that's where the resources come into play that is listed in the executive order. Not only are we working with the state of Indiana, we are working with the Chicago Minority Supplier Development Council, which has jurisdiction over Northwest Indiana. We are working with the city of Indianapolis, who has a MBE and WBE certification program. So we are not limiting our resources just locally, but we are looking statewide, turning under every stone to make sure that we are bringing resources to our businesses here in Gary. So we're just not talking about it. We're just not passing paper. We are actually building something that can be sustained in the long run. And
they came down to this island, they want an expert opinion before they let
Mr. Vicari, I think you're please continue. Sorry.
as we continue to produce our reports, how they say the proof is in the numbers. Right now, we track our construction projects and are able to break down by construction trade who's hiring local, who's hiring minorities, who's hiring females, and soon enough we'll be able to track veterans as well. But we have done some good work in this short amount of time of implementing the executive order and making it transparent and making it equitable. And as always, I always invite our council people to contact me with businesses in your district that we can refer to many of our contractors, construction managers, and engineers to ensure that we're providing resources as well as holding them accountable. And as the mayor said, I as well make myself available via cell phone, email. During COVID, you may be able to come down to the plant, but just send a girl a text or a email, and I will get it and respond. So if we take the time to work with our partners, then they'll be able to get it right. And I can speak to some conversations that I've had with representatives of Broadway Lofts of specifically looking to identify opportunities in minority businesses. So when we work with them, we'll be able to get our end goal by working collectively together.
All right, thank you so much. And we look forward to further discussion in the committee meeting and probably a whole series of meetings as we think about our CBA and the main thrust of the goals behind it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the administration, the mayor, or other department heads who are on? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Weatherspoon?
I have one quick announcement to make before we adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just got the information a little while ago and got it completed from the Arts, History, and Culture Committee. The Gary want to announce that the Gary International Black Film Festival is presenting the Gary, Indiana premiere of Nation Time Gary, film that's directed by William Graves. The film itself chronicles the 1972 National Black Political Convention, which was held in Gary. Nation Time Gary is the only film record of this historical event that happened in 1972. I must say, by showing my age, I do remember it. I was a high schooler. The film features, of course, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Dick Gregory, Coretta Scott King, our own Honorable Richard Gordon Hatcher, Betty Shabazz, Amara Baraka. Tickets are available for this event actually on our city webpage. If you go to the city webpage and look under news and events, you will find a link there where you can either see the film via online, or you can attend the film, which is going to be held at our baseball stadium this coming Saturday, August 22nd at 4:30. So again, I would highly recommend this. It is a historical, or should I say it was a historical event that of course led to others leaving the city and going out and running for mayors and governors and things of this nature. It was the beginning of the Black Empowerment Movement. So again, I encourage everyone to attend either the baseball field or either watching it online. The event is 100% free.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Williams.
At this time, I'd like to try to make a change to the time for the committee hearing. Is it possible to set it at 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock?
That's possible. Attorney Williams, does that require that we?
Yes, that'll require a motion and a second.
Okay, so it's been moved to change the Public Safety Committee hearing time to from 6 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilwoman Burns Caldwell. Any questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
I think she had some technical issues.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown, Councilwoman Brown,
Yes. Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Witherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 7 yes, 0 no's.
With 7 votes for yes, the Public Safety Committee meeting will be at 5 p.m. on August 25th, 2020. Any other new business, questions, discussions?
Just want to make sure, Mr. President, that this, the ordinance CPO 2020-39 is going to back to committee, and it will be on the 25th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you.
I don't think I gave the time.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. President.
Stand adjourned. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
There we go.